I'd like to get your response to what we've seen with the attacks at London Bridge. What are the lessons that we should be learning from it?
Total shock at what happened. Total shock that somebody would kill people at a conference that was dealing with rehabilitation of prisoners and the prevent strategy, and then to go outside and threaten people with a knife, and then the police had to do what they have to do. And we now end up with 3 people dead, 2 of whom were trying to help people get through horrible times in their lives. And so I do think there are lessons that we have to learn from this, and there has to be a very full investigation into the circumstances of the prison sentence that was served and the release from it, and what services can do to help.
On that note, Usman Khan, the attacker, was given an indeterminate jail sentence, wasn't he, for being convicted of a plot to blow up the London Stock Exchange. Overturned on appeal. He was then released after spending 8 years in jail. Of course, his original sentence was 16 years. Yes. Do you think that people convicted of terrorism offences need to serve a full prison sentence?
I think it depends on the circumstances, depends on the sentence, but crucially depends on what they've done in prison.
So not necessarily then?
No, not necessarily, no. I think there has to be an examination of how our prison services work, and crucially what happens to them on release from prison. Because I need to know whether or not the parole board were involved in his release. Apparently they were not. They made that statement quite quickly after the release, after yesterday's terrible incident. Secondly, that there was apparently no probation service involvement in monitoring this former prisoner, who after all had only served half his sentence, and he came out I think a year ago. And there has to be an examination of what goes on in the prison, because prisons ought to be a place where people are put away because of major serious offences, but also a place where rehabilitation takes place.
So what would a Labour government do to change
well, we do a
current
number of
system
things.
then?
One, properly fund our prison service so that the prison officers are able to do their job, both being prison officers as well as educators, as well as people that deal with dangerous prisoners who've committed very dangerous, very serious offences. Secondly, that there be a psychological assessment of somebody in his situation before they are released, to see if they are actually a danger, an ever-present danger to society, and that the parole board be involved in making that decision whether they go out ahead of full sentence. And after that, we have a probation service worthy of the name. Our probation service was half privatised, is not up to scratch, is not able to deal with the number of cases they have to deal with, and a lot of prisoners are simply put on a tag, or ex-prisoners rather, put on a tag, which if they breach, clearly then that the police are alerted. Now, in the case of this individual, he obviously was not in breach of the tag because he was at a conference which it was a wholly legitimate place to be. But something happened and he killed people at the conference, and then himself was killed on the street.
As you say, he was killed on the street. The police shot him dead. Were they right to shoot him dead?
I think they had no choice. They were stuck with a situation where there was a credible threat of a bomb belt around his body, and it's an awful situation for any police officer or any public servant to be put in.
You've spoken about shoot to kill before. In 2015 you said, "I'm not happy with the shoot to kill policy in general. I think it's quite dangerous. I think it could also be counterproductive." Is that still your view?
This was a situation where the police were faced with a very dangerous position. Somebody he'd already killed 2 people. The police may or may not have known that at that point. And he was wrestled to the ground, and as far as they were concerned, he had explosives strapped to his body, and they took the action that they could. I think the police have to take what action they can to defend people in that situation.
So have you changed your mind then when you said that you're not happy with the shoot-to-kill policy?
The points I've made in the past, particularly in relation to Northern Ireland, this is going back quite a long way, was that there was a concern in Northern Ireland that the police were adopting a shoot-to-kill policy when it was possible to arrest people rather than shoot them, and that's my point. There should never be the first alternative to shoot people, but if there's no other alternative, then that's what you do.
OK. I just want to talk a little bit more widely about keeping people safe, because this is what lots of voters will be basing some of their decision on. Will this person keep me safe if they're Prime Minister? The Labour manifesto says that you want to ensure the powers exercised by the security services are proportionate and used in accordance with human rights. Some people will read that and think you want to make it harder for the security services to do their jobs.
No, I want to protect public servants, be they in the armed forces or the security services somewhere else, that they know that they have a code that they have to adopt, which is one about protecting life and protecting the human rights of all of us, and that they're also accountable for what they do. Hence, all the things in our manifesto are about parliamentary accountability of government services and of security services.
Just talking about human rights in particular, do you ever worry that, in the wake of terror attacks, for example, the balance between security and human rights swings too far in favour of human rights, in favour of security as opposed to human rights?
Well, the two things don't have to be indivisible by any means.
But sometimes you have to make a difficult choice between those two competing things.
Well, difficult decisions have to be made all the time. That's what government has to do, and that's what public life is about. But the fundamental has to be the rights of the individual to express their views in society in a proportionate way, and it has to be about our rights of free speech and assembly. That is surely what we're about as a country. That's why we are part of the UN human rights system. It's why we're part of the European Convention on Human Rights. These things are actually quite important because they protect all of us.
Do you think that sometimes human rights are under a threat, though? When it comes to the balance between them and security?
You have to create a secure society, and you have to defend human rights at the same time. If you give up all your democratic and human rights, then you've actually given in to those that would take them away anyway.
Talking about that issue of human rights, you've said previously that Shamima Begum, the Islamic State bride, should be allowed to return to the United Kingdom. Are you still concerned about the idea of stripping British people from their citizenship if they do go to fight for jihadist causes abroad?
Yes, because if you strip away their citizenship, where are they going to go? They then are going to become stateless people roaming around into ungoverned places, like in Libya, like in parts of Syria, and they create another terrorist force of tomorrow, ISIS or something else. Surely, if somebody is a citizen of any one country, then it's up to that country to take responsibility for them. And that's why we said that she should be brought back to Britain for questioning, possible charge, but certainly for questioning as a way of gaining intelligence on what motivated her in the first place and what her rights actually are.
I mean,
there's a point here that if you take away the rights of people and send them into that dangerous place, then actually, ultimately, we're all in greater danger.
But some would listen to you and say, you're not saying that terrorists should have to serve their full sentences. You're not saying that you're going to give increased powers to the security services. You're not saying that you're going to make it more difficult for jihadists to return to the United Kingdom. Is this man going to keep me safe if he's Prime Minister?
Those jihadists that return are going to return to have to face questioning. If we let them loose into an ungoverned space like Libya, we're all in greater danger in the long run. It is making us safer by preventing the growth of terrorist forces, by preventing the growth of irrational, powerful forces, and also looking at who's funding them, looking at who's making money out of them, look who's supporting them. Those are issues that are very important, but also having an inclusive approach in our society to stop people being radicalised and ending up in that very dangerous place, which is a threat to all of us.
Now, the NATO summit is taking place this week, the kind of summit that, if you become Prime Minister, you're going to be hosting. What countries would you consider to be our allies?
Well, many countries are our allies all around the world. I mean, any country that signs up to the generality of the democratic way of life, of human rights, of environmental sustainability.
Who would be our important allies then, as if Jeremy Corbyn was Prime Minister?
Well, all of our neighbours are obviously important allies. The European countries are our important allies. The United States is an ally. But let's look at it on the basis of how we approach the real threats to this world, which are probably climate change and issues like that. And I would look forward to meeting President Trump to have a chat with him about his designs on our health service.
Would he be an ally?
Well, I haven't had the pleasure of meeting President Trump, so I'd be happy to have a discussion with him. But what I would simply say is this, that a relationship with the United States in the future will be a trade relationship, yes, but we're not going to give up our public services to the United States. And I think what the Prime Minister's doing in allowing these trade talks to go on now for more than 2 years, which are a threat to so much of our way of life, in so much of our way of life in terms of our security of conditions in health and our security of conditions in environment and food, and handing over our public services to American companies to come in and run them.
I mean, they would dispute a lot of what you're saying there. They would say that actually the NHS is not on the table when it comes to...
Well, it's absolutely on the table. It's quite clearly there in the document, which has been sent away for text drawing up.
Talking about NATO, because NATO is something that you've previously talked about in your career as an MP as well. In 2011, you said, we have got to be realistic that NATO is a major problem and a major difficulty, and we have to campaign against NATO's power, its influence and its global reach, because it's a danger to world peace and a danger to security. If you're Prime Minister, is that the message you'd be taking to NATO summits? What
I would take to the NATO summit is this, that NATO was founded as a result of the Second World War. It was a product of its strength of the Cold War, and I think we have to use all of the countries of NATO to try and build... So
have you changed your mind on NATO?
Well, if I can develop my argument slightly, just to say we have to develop security around the world by bringing about a respectful relationship with Russia and other countries, but also we have to recognise the need to bring about peace where it is in danger, such as in Iran or such as in Korea at the present time. And that can be done by serious diplomatic negotiation.
OK. And then just finally, you're an Arsenal fan. Who do you want the next manager to be?
Well, good debate. Personally, I like Patrick Vieira. Iconic player, brilliant guy, and has done so much for education of children back home in Africa. I think Patrick Vieira. OK. Jeremy Corbyn, thank you very much. But by the way, it won't be me.
No matter what happens at the election?
No matter what happens, I will not be... No matter what happens in the election, I will not be the Arsenal manager.
OK.
So that might be good news for some people, whatever, but that's the situation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.